Y'all, welcome to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Lisa Ivanovna. I am a sovereignty educator, and this is the story of my positive sovereign birth. So, I went into labor, early labor, probably several days before I went into active labor, I should say. So, if you're not familiar with early labor, active labor, so early labor, you have contractions or Braxton Hicks, and they're not painful. So when you get real contractions, it can feel like menstrual cramping. It doesn't necessarily have to be painful. It can just feel uncomfortable, which for me, it was mostly just uncomfortable. It wasn't really painful. And I was taking, because she was 2 weeks overdue. So, overdue. There's actually no such thing as overdue. But I was trying to self induce with a homeopathic kit that I had gotten with all these natural medicines. So, there was a alternative to induction in there. So I was taking that, and I think that that was causing contractions, but it wasn't putting me into active labor. So I was taking that like every couple of days, every day. It does say in the kit not to take it regularly or routinely, so I tried to stray away from taking it routinely, but there were two different kinds that it said if you are trying to induce and this medication doesn't work, then try this other one. So I was kind of switching between them. If like one wasn't really producing strong enough contractions, then I would take the other one like an hour or so later. So anyway, I that whole week was in my sleep having contractions, and then the morning of the 11th, or I should say the night before, on the 10th of October, around 8 p.m., I started feeling that the contractions were getting more and more regular. Like I was consistently having them, because before that it was really irregular, which is how you know that it's not real labor, because it's just random. So I started feeling like they were regular, and I thought, okay, around 8 p.m., I'm going to go ahead and go to bed. My fiance was doing stuff on his computer, so I just told him good night. I said, I'm going to get some sleep just in case labor starts in the middle of the night. And I told him, you should probably get some sleep too, because, like I said, we did an undisturbed, unassisted, free birth, sovereign birth, meaning we didn't have a doula, we didn't have a midwife. My fiance was basically my doula, my midwife. And I was my own doula, my own midwife. So we were free birthing, so it was just going to be the two of us. And we did actually have a woman from our church who was a doula for many, many years, and she volunteered to help us out if we needed it. So she was more than happy to help. However, when I went into labor, she went out of town that week. Her and her husband went on a trip. And so she wasn't even in town, but it was part of my birth plan to notify her. So the next day, when I actually did go into labor, active labor, my fiance did go ahead and text her, even though she was out of town, just because we said that we would. But she was always just kind of like a backup plan. My plan was like if I was going to be in labor for active labor for more than 12 hours and I was super exhausted and like my fiance couldn't handle it, I couldn't handle it, then we were going to call her in. But we didn't have to do that. So anyway, night before I start getting contractions, and I did not feel any cramping with those contractions. So they were early labor contractions, but they were regular. So labor was ramping up. Then we woke up at about 6 a.m. the next morning, And that was when contractions really started, active labor started. And pretty much from that point forward, I was having contractions every 5 to 6 minutes up until she was born, which was around 5:25, 5:30. So during that time, my fiance went to work. So unfortunately, he had taken his paternity leave starting from her due date, which we only had a guess date. There really are no due dates. Because again, we had also an undisturbed pregnancy, so I didn't go to a midwife or an OB or anything like that. We agreed to do 3 ultrasounds throughout the pregnancy. And this was actually before I did research on ultrasounds and all the dangers of them. So with my next pregnancy, I definitely would not get ultrasounds. That's just my own personal conviction about it, but you're free to do whatever you want to do. I wouldn't recommend it, but anyway, so we did do ultrasounds because we also wanted to know the gender of the baby. That was like the biggest reason. So anyway, labor starts, okay, around 6. So like I was saying, my fiance took his leave around October 26th. The reason I was starting to talk about the whole ultrasound thing was because the ultrasound tech gave us the guess date, the due date. So she said at the 12-week appointment, which was when we went in, she said she looks like she's about 12 weeks. And she also actually told us it was a boy, so for like 20 weeks we thought it was a boy. And then she said, okay, so the due date is probably October 26th. We never had an actual due date because we didn't know when she was conceived or when the first day of my last period was, which is usually what you use to track a due date, or a guess date, I should say. So we never had a real due date. Anyway, my fiance took his paternity leave starting October 26th, and she was overdue by 2 weeks. So he stayed at home on his paternity leave for 2 extra weeks until October 11th. And then the HR at his work was like, you can't be on paternity leave unless like the baby's actually here. So he went back to work that morning that I went into active labor. But again, leading up to that week, it was kind of like I was having contractions, but it was really irregular. So we were just taking it easy. And I was like, if things start to really like ramp up, then I will, go ahead and call you and let you know to come home. So actually, earlier I had said that the contractions were 5 minutes apart the whole day. That's actually not true. So in the morning, he went to work. The contractions were an irregular amount of time apart. So they were like, sometimes they were like 10, 15, 20 minutes apart. Sometimes they were 5 minutes apart. But it was a very slow, like, ramp up. It was a really, really good progression throughout the day, which I think made a massive difference in the way we were able to handle the labor and delivery, our emotional state, our mental state. Like, the fact that it progressed very steadily was great for us. So anyway, around, I want to say, so he went to work. I was just doing chores around the house. Like, I was in active labor, but it was really manageable. It wasn't painful at all. It was uncomfortable, but it was not painful whatsoever. And I was doing the dishes, I was doing the laundry, I was just kind of cleaning up, vacuuming, because I was like, okay, once the baby comes, I'm not going to be able to do this stuff. So I might as well just, do my last bit of tidying before she's here. So around 10 or 11 a.m., my fiance called me, and he was like, how's it going? And he had a consultation that was going to be like an hour away, so he wanted to call me and check in and see, like, should I go to this consultation or should I, come home? And I told him, yeah, the contractions are like 20 minutes apart. And so he said, okay, I'm going to come home from work. So, one second. Got a fussy baby. Here you go, baby. Anyway, so he came home around, I want to say 11 a.m. I ordered some groceries on DoorDash. I got some snacks for my labor because I was not going to be laboring without snacks. So around like 11:30, he came home around like 10:30, I want to say. And then around 11:30, our groceries came. And I was actively laboring, so I did a lot of preparation, a lot of research for my labor and delivery, because that's what you have to do if you're going to free birth, sovereign birth. So, again, I was my own doula, my own midwife. So I was walking around. So we live on 8 acres on the lake here in Austin, a little bit outside of Austin. And so we have this big driveway and this big backyard with a little trail that heads down to the dock. So I was just walking around, to get things moving. So I was walking, I was stretching, I was taking loops around the driveway, I was walking around the kitchen island, I was walking in the backyard. I was doing the side stepping on the stairs, like curb walking, but on the stairs. So I was moving regularly. That was what our doula friend from church also told us to do. Was she said if she turned to my fiance and she says if she can still talk, she can still walk. Like if she can say I can't walk anymore, she can still walk. So I took that to heart and I was like, okay, I'm just going to keep walking. But again, I was not in any kind of pain. So it wasn't, it was uncomfortable. But the thing with the contractions is you get breaks in between. Like it really is like waves. So you have that little bit of discomfort, but then it's fine after that. So as the day was progressing, the contractions were getting closer and closer together. We did choose to have a water birth, so I actually got a birth tub. I got the Oasis birth tub, and so we actually had our tub set up like a few days before my due date, so it was already set up in the living room. I had all my supplies spread out on the dining table. I had bought like an obstetric kit from In His Hands. And if y'all want me to make videos about things I did to prepare, postpartum supplies that I got that were a lifesaver, everything like that, if you guys want videos on those things, let me know in the comments and I will be more than happy to make those videos. I probably will anyway, but if you let me know in the comments that you want those videos, then if you have specific questions, I can address those in the videos. But anyway, so labor's progressing really well. And then pretty much I'm just having snacks. I'm walking around. And then at one point, I don't know at one point in the day, I started getting feeling like I had diarrhea. So one of the signs of active labor, aside from the contractions, is you're going to get diarrhea. You might throw up, or you're not going to get diarrhea, but you could get diarrhea. You could be throwing up, have an upset stomach. Those are signs that labor is progressing and you're in active labor. You can lose your mucus plug. You might not, up until you deliver, you might not lose your mucus plug. Your water might break. It might not. So these are all things to also keep in mind. So for me, I felt like I was gonna like have diarrhea. I went on the toilet and I did not. TMI. And then I also at the same time felt like I was gonna throw up. So this was the most humbling moment of my life, was being on the toilet in labor with potential diarrhea and with a bucket in front of me to throw up, and my poor fiance next to me just trying to comfort me. Most humbling moment of my life. So that was fun. Um, and then after that, the contractions were getting closer and closer together. I also had written for myself scripture, so different scriptures to read during my labor. So at one point, when my fiance started filling up the tub, I did grab my little booklet of scriptures, and I was just reading those on the couch to myself, and just, I was honestly, aside from that, a prayer warrior the entire time. So I was praying the whole time for a good labor, for easy labor, for pain-free labor and delivery, because we did pray for supernatural pain-free childbirth. And we used prayers from the book Supernatural Childbirth by Jackie Mize, which I highly, highly recommend for any believers. And if you're a non-believer, maybe that'll be your your story of being saved. The Bible does say that women will be saved through childbearing, so that could be your opportunity for that. But anyway, so our little moment on the toilet happened. Then my fiance started filling up the tub. I want to say around, he started probably filling it up around like 3:30, somewhere around there. Or no, I want to say around like 3, he started filling it up. Because then, by 3:45, I had gotten into the tub. So I got into the tub, and they recommend that you get into the tub when your contractions are 5 to 3 minutes apart. Now, like I said, mine were 5 minutes apart for like hours and hours, like 5 to 6 minutes apart. So I waited until it was like closer to 3 minutes apart. So once I had like 3 or 4 contractions that were 3 minutes apart, I said, okay, I'm going to get in the tub. I got in the tub, and then I was a little bit worried about stalling labor, and I said that to my fiance. I said, I'm a little worried that I might be getting in too soon, and I don't want to stall labor. So he actually told me, why don't you go ahead and get out, because we don't want to stall. So I got out, and after like 2 or 3 contractions out of the water, I was like, nope, I can't do this out of the water. I'm getting in. So I got into the tub, back into the tub, felt so much better. And then I labored in the tub for about an hour and 45 minutes, or about an hour and a half. And she was born at about 5:30. So my fiance had set up a camera on our kitchen counter, and he was able to kind of track the time from that. But from the time that I got into the tub to her being born, it was about an hour 45. Now, the tub was great. Again, it helped me with, it was nice having the warmth on me of the water, and my fiance was consistently like filling it with warm water. We did have a little temperature that came with a little thermostat that came with the tub that was kind of monitoring that it was a good temperature. And the contractions were getting stronger and closer together, and I was turning more and more into a feral animal. Okay, I was pretty much that. Like, that is the best way to describe. I at no point did I go into like a trance or like a different state of being. There are a lot of women who describe that experience like they don't even remember their labor. That happened to my best friend. She gave birth 10 weeks ahead of me, and she like barely remembers her labor and delivery. With me, I was very alert, very much there the whole time. Oh, and the other thing that I should mention is I was supplementing hardcore. So I took different. So we take Heart and Soil supplements, which is a company that makes beef organ supplements, and so I had taken, and up until leading up to my labor and delivery, also I had taken these pretty regularly, but they sell a prenatal stack, which has like their fat supplement, which has like beef fat, and then they have their mood, like brain and mood one. So I had taken that. And then they have there's some other one that I can't think of right now. But anyway, so I had taken those. I took beef liver pills also to keep my energy up. And this was just throughout the day. And at a certain point, as things were progressing in the tub, I started throwing up. So I needed to have a bucket, and I was throwing up. And, but again, the contractions, they are like waves. So it would get really, really intense, and I would turn into like this, like, a completely different person, where I was hot and I was asking my fiance, and he was so incredible. Like, massive props to him for just being everything that I could possibly need. I'm so thankful to have him. But he was making sure, and I was able to communicate pretty well too. Like I had this cup with lemonade and some water, and what else did I have in there? I had electrolytes in there. So he was handing me that to take sips. And I asked him to fan me at one point because I was feeling really hot during, like, towards the last contractions. And then, like I said, I would turn into this feral animal. What I mean by that is I started, like, grunt screaming in, like, the last 10 pushes, I want to say. I was just, like, guttural, like, screaming during the contractions. And the actual pushing, so when it came time to push, my water broke on probably like the fifth, fourth, or third to last push. So I want to say like the fifth to last contraction was when my water broke. I could feel it, in the water. And then I only pushed about 3 times, like 3 to 5 times I pushed. And then the last 3 pushes was when it was really like, I was getting a little bit discouraged. I was still praying the whole time. So I was, like I said, a prayer warrior the entire time. I was like a mantra in my head. I was telling myself, I will not tear. I will not need an episiotomy. We will not have any complications. I do not come into covenant with fear. I do not come into covenant with pain. And just praying, like, in Jesus' name, pain, get away from me. Fear, get away from me. I do not come into covenant with the spirit of fear. And then I want to say transition was like 3 pushes out. And I had taken this natural birthing course. And in the course, the educator, she said that with her babies, she's had 8 babies naturally home birth. And she would always reach down to feel the baby's head. So I was doing that on like the last 5 to 3 pushes. I would reach down to feel, and I couldn't feel her head. So I was getting a little bit discouraged, thinking that I was going to be pushing for a lot longer. And it wasn't discouragement in the way of like I was upset or like it really emotionally affected me, but I just was mentally and emotionally prepared to be like pushing more, essentially is what I'm saying. So I would reach down and I couldn't feel her head. It was still just like I was just feeling myself. And then she came out with the fetal ejection reflex. So she just whirled out like in the water. She like twirled behind me under my legs, and it happened so fast. I could feel her head come out and then her whole body in the next push. So it was like in 2 pushes she was out. And again, only pushed like 3 to 5 times. And she whirled out. My fiance was standing behind me, and neither of us expected the baby to like come so quickly. So he sees she came out. He's like, oh my gosh. So he grabs her, but the umbilical cord was kind of like like it had like was under my leg. So he had to basically dunk her back in the water and put her over like under my leg to bring her up in front of me so I could hold her. So she comes out, perfect, healthy baby girl. She was great. You know, I kind of held her like a little bit with her chest kind of hanging down so she could get like anything that was in her lungs, especially because once you get them out of the water, he had brought her up, head up, which you're not supposed to do because it can bring fluid in to their nose and mouth. So, and he had to put her back in the water to get her out. So I was kind of holding her that way to hopefully get some of the fluid out. And she came out. She was perfect. I was doing great. I will note a couple of details that I missed. So when I had my moment on the toilet, my most humbling moment of my life, that was when I lost my mucus plug. So that was I want to say like 2 to 3 hours before I got in the tub, maybe 2 hours before I got in the tub, somewhere around there. And then I already said that my water broke in the water. And she came out and she was absolutely perfect. She was alert. I was doing great, you know, and the other detail that I forgot to mention was the pushing itself, the delivery was not painful. What was painful is I got a tear in my labia and I could feel on one of the last few pushes the tear happening, and I audibly said, ow, 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 ow. So that was what was painful, but actually pushing her out and delivering her was not painful. It was very uncomfortable, but it was not painful. And like I said before, we prayed for supernatural pain-free childbirth. And so all glory and praise to God for the labor and delivery that we had. He was and still is our great physician. He took great care of us and really came through for us. So we are just so lucky and so blessed to have such an incredible Heavenly Father who took care of us. So all praise to God, all praise to Jesus. And anyway, so then she was born at about 5:25, 5:30, and the sun was setting, so it was literally like golden hour in golden hour. It was so perfect. I got out of the tub. I was super cold. It's really important that once a mom and baby are out of the water, if you're doing a water birth, to keep them really warm, to have a warm room for them to be in. So, we had a bunch of towels and I had my robe and my fiance wrapped me in it. And then I delivered the placenta. It came really quickly. It came like 5 minutes after I got out of the tub. It was like 5 to 10 minutes. After I'd gotten out of the tub, I just intuitively knew to squat. Not intuitively, but again, I had done a lot of research, and it was my own doula and my own doctor, my own midwife. So I again didn't expect the placenta to come so quickly, the same way that I didn't expect the baby to come so quickly, because typically it comes within like 20 minutes on average. Sometimes it can take up to 2 hours. Anyway, the placenta came out. Not all of it was delivered, so a piece of it I delivered probably another 30 minutes later, and then the last bit of it came out the next day, actually, in my pad. And I was like, is this, I had to like show it to my fiance and be like, does this look like placenta to you? He was like, yeah, I think it is. It's probably like the last little bit since it broke off a little bit, which can be really dangerous. But here's the thing. Your body, if you're going to free birth, if you're going to sovereign birth, do unassisted birth, you have to understand that pregnancy and birth is designed to work. God designed pregnancy and birth to work. So I was not overly worried about, anything. The biggest thing I was worried about was the tear, because right after you deliver the baby, it looks crazy down there. And then if you have any kind of tearing, it looks even crazier. So that was kind of the biggest concern that we had, was like the labia tear that I had looked a little crazy. But after a few days it cooled down, and I had made like padsicles with aloe and witch hazel. And so that, got so much better after just a few days. And today we are exactly 2 weeks postpartum. So our sweet girl is 2 weeks old today. She's laying here next to me. And that is the story of our labor and delivery. So I wanted to make this video because when I was doing research and watching birth testimonies, I found very few unassisted birth stories. I actually don't think I found any videos of people talking about free birthing, sovereign birth. Every video that I watched, it was either a hospital birth, or they had hired a doula or a midwife, which if that's what you want to do that. But I wanted to make this video as someone who did go the free birth route, did go the sovereign birth route, and it just goes along with the rest of my content because I am a sovereignty educator. So this is my positive story. I hope that, this was useful for you. I hope that if you are planning to conceive, or you are pregnant, or you are watching this in active labor, I wish you the best of luck, and I pray that the Lord is with you through this time, that you have a perfect, complication-free, easy, pain-free labor and delivery, because it is possible, and God's word does promise us, oh, sweet girl, pain-free childbirth if we ask for it, because Jesus died on the cross for us, and he became the curse, and he freed us from the law, and he freed us from pain. So you can pray for it. And I mean pain in childbirth. I hope I'm being clear about that, not just pain in general. We are still going to suffer as followers of Christ, but we're going to suffer for his sake, not for our own, because we have an incredible Heavenly Father who loves us. So yeah, that is my story. If you guys have any questions, do leave them in the comments. If there are specific videos you want me to make, please let me know in the comments also. And that's it. That's where we wrap it up. I will talk to you guys next time. If you're brand new here, go check out my podcast also on this channel called the Holistic Sovereign Podcast, where I talk about all kinds of different sovereignty concepts. And especially if you are pregnant, I highly, highly recommend, or planning to conceive, I highly recommend you check out the diet episode, the biblical diet episode with Jacob's regeneration. That is going to do wonders for you, because I think one of the reasons that we were able to have such a great labor and delivery and pregnancy was because of our diet and eating fairly biblically, if I do say so myself. So, anyway, I will talk to you guys next time. Bye, y'all.